Tommy,
Yes.
thanks for doing this, man. First of all, I'm not gonna bombard you with questions or anything like that. We're just gonna chill out a little bit.
Should I get my slice of pizza?
You can get your slice of pizza.
Just kidding. I'll eat it.
Well, actually, I'm actually the guy that recently interviewed you over the telephone for Xperience and RadioRadioX, and the brand new issue that comes out like tomorrow, we'll actually have that interview in it.
Nice.
So yeah.
Sebastian Bach, he's going out with Twisted Sister, right?
He is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw that and I thought, man, that's funny.
I'm actually mostly a Sebastian Bach fan because of the Trailer Park Boys.
Right. Yeah. That's fair enough.
But no, man. I think first of all, right here at White Lake Studios and this Upstate Unplugged concert series that we're about to experience tonight, I think this is like the coolest thing, man.
Well, thank you. We'll see.
We
how
will see.
do. We'll try not to hurt anyone.
But I think one of the biggest things that intrigued me in just learning more about you is how young you started out doing this. So, like 12 years old, hitting the road.
More like, when we were really playing shows and stuff, it was more like 13, 14.
That's still pretty damn young.
Yeah, and then, in the middle of 10th grade, it was like, I had to drop out to, be able to go across state line to get the paper from my mom and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it happened.
It did happen, and
here I am.
Here you are, but it's, so, I mean, you've literally been doing this your whole life.
Yeah, imagine that.
I mean, it's probably hard to even remember much before it,
Funny you should say that. I've been making notes of things that I remember from before I was this and all that, and damn. I started making a little journal of like, what was I doing when I was like 5, and I was throwing rocks at cars at the end of the street by myself, things
That's
like this.
Right. You were a troublemaker.
Really bad kid. Holy shit! No wonder my mom let me go do this with my brother to keep me out of jail.
Right. I mean, ultimately it was a success story, but I assume most parents would be like, "That's a terrible idea."
Yeah. I've come into contact with some youngins these days whose parents are, they're backing, and not quite as young as that when I was that young, but some young kids that are kind of in the same boat. They really want to, they feel it in their soul, and they want to go do the thing.
Well, we need the thing to keep on going. I don't feel necessarily that the younger kids these days are not going out like they did in our time. They're attached to the devices.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're getting their music like this.
And honestly, one of the things that really scares me is this new AI music, the music without the soul. Because you see how far it came so quickly, but imagine in 2 years from now what it'll be. You might hear what sounds like the greatest song of all time without a soul.
Yeah. Well, worse than that is why would they bother? Because you can't make money on making songs and putting them out there anymore. So the only way you're going to make money off that is if it turns into a person. And what are you going to do? Send Milli Vanilli out there? Remember how that went down? I mean,
that's a good point.
Not so good on the old,
Right.
Let's try and pretend these guys actually played this song, and didn't work. So it's not going to work for AI either. Right? And so there's the conundrum. You can make AI songs all you fucking want,
right?
But they ain't going to make you any money in the regular traditional ways.
That is a very valid point. Yeah.
Why would you spend $1 billion fucking dollars on that?
Good. Well, that gives me a little inkling of hope there, because I'm just seeing where it's going. I guess holograms would probably be the way.
And I think that could be kind of cool. But then what do? Make up some So you take all the things that you put in to make the song in the AI realm, and then have them make a human hologram out of the same. Or maybe you add a little flavor to it and say, put a little Puff Daddy in there too, or whatever.
Right.
I mean, what are you gonna, what are you gonna do with that?
It was one of those big concerts years ago. You might remember the footage where Snoop Dogg was performing, and then all of a sudden the deceased Tupac comes out as a hologram, which is probably pretty cool to see, kind of creepy at the same time. But I was just thinking about all the people in the crowd that were tripping their balls off.
Yeah.
That's gotta be a mind fuck.
Yeah, I'm not into any of it, and I can't help but think it's all gonna be a bust anyway, because if people can just say I want a new song today and AI that, and it comes to them the doorstep, it's going to be too shallow for to get gratification out of it that way. I mean, the idea of making art, whether it's film or painting or music, any sort of art form, is that what goes into it and the human part of that, you can't ever make that up. AI is never going to be able to replicate the soul of that and how that transpires to make art. And they're going to talk about it all till the cows come out. But again, I don't think it's tangible, and in a real way that people are going to really grab onto it, and it's going to make it.
Well, I sure hope not. I sure hope not.
Keep up the faith, man.
We need the good artists out there. We need to keep really making the real music, the real soul, and the real feeling. But we also got to get these kids to get up and off of their asses and go out to some shows too.
Yeah, we're seeing more of that. I mean, I'm seeing more of that, a whole lot more. Just in the little shows that I go out and do with Carla, or even with Cowboys and Campfire. There's more kids showing up at them.
Good.
That maybe their dad turned them on to the replacements or whatever, but there's more of a thing happening with that than I've seen in the past for me, and that gives me hope too. It's a good thing that kids are getting turned on to stuff that, whether their parents liked it or whatever, is that it's at least it's something that's tangible that has some credibility to it, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it, man. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and then you got some pizza to
Well, get the fuck out of here.
Let's get out. Thank you so much, man.
Sure, man.
I appreciate it.
You guys have fun.
I look forward to later.
All right, thave you.
Yeah.
Mark for that.
We'll have as much fun as we can.
Pleasure meeting